All right, so you might recognize Rebecca Vitsmun after going viral from a CNN interview after a tornado tore through Oklahoma. After publicly coming out as an atheist during her interview, Rebecca made the decision to team up with Foundation Beyond Relief, where she developed the Humanist disaster recovery. I'm happy that she's here to speak about that today, and I know that everybody else is also excited to hear about her and her journey. So if you wouldn't mind helping me invite up Rebecca Vitsmun.
Today we're here to talk to you about Humanist disaster recovery teams. Most people know that I went viral on CNN. What a lot of people don't know is a story that happened about a week later that drives me, and that it became. I took something horrific and created Humanist disaster recovery teams out of it. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys that story before moving on today. Let's move this closer. There we go. So what ended up happening was, it's to set up the scene, the bulldozers were coming. It's the end of the line. All of my stuff has to be at the curb because they're taking it, and they're going to stick it in this truck, and it's going to its final resting place. So absolutely everything that I can do, this is the end. And so what I really wanted to do is take pictures of these little items from, I had set aside all of this clothing that I was going to make a baby quilt out of. And it was every item of Anders, like his ones that I put him in the moment it came out of the dryer, and I just had all these beautiful memories of my baby. And I even had these thoughts that one day when I was a 90-year-old woman, I would remember holding him in that outfit when I had this quilt and everything like that. I'm very sentimental. I get into this stuff, I create projects like a crazy person. But I left this for the end because this was going to be the hardest thing to let go, because it's letting go of that tangible connection to my baby that I had. So I put it all to the end, and then so I was setting everything out. I was going to take a picture of each. I don't exactly know what I was going to do with the pictures, but I just thought, if I get these pictures, I'll feel better. That was it. That's the only concern I had, was if I take the pictures, I know I'll feel better. So 2 women showed up, and they said, "Hey, we're here to help. Do you need any help?" And I said, "Absolutely." I didn't know if I was going to get the pictures done before the bulldozers came. I didn't know. I had a lot to do. And so, we're sitting there, we're going through my child's belongings, and this is when the woman said, "So which church do you go to?" And I said, "Oh, I don't go to church." And she said, "You're raising this baby without Jesus." You guys, it was not funny. It hurt so much. I was so mad at that set. I was just like, I didn't know what to do. So I just said, "Yep." I certainly am. What am I going to do with this woman? Okay, well, yeah. The answer is yes. And so she spent the next 30 minutes, though, trying to convert me. And it was horrible, because I'm trying to deal with the emotions of letting go of this stuff I had put off to the last second. These bulldozers are coming to take away all of my things. My house was just destroyed by a tornado. I am very weak internally, and I have this woman who's telling me what a horrible human being I am. And basically calling my parenting into question, basically telling me I'm a horrible mom while I'm going through this experience. It was horrible. And so, but I needed her help. What am I going to do? I need this woman to not leave. And so suddenly I'm concerned with offending her. I'm concerned with losing her help, because her help has to come with a side order of Jesus. So instead, I started to try to find escape in my mind while she's going on and on about how God had put her in my life to bring me back home to Him, and how He missed my baby so much, and all this other stuff, and blah, 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 blah. And she just went on and on. And so I escaped into my mind thinking, you know what, I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to find a humanist organization. I need to find them tonight, make sure they're not doing this, because if they're doing this to somebody in their destroyed home, this is terrible. And I'm going to make sure they're not doing that. And so I was like, find them. And that's what was going through my mind, was I need to volunteer, I need to make sure people are doing this the whole time. And so whenever we got everything done, I got all the pictures, the bulldozers came, and I had completed, I felt internally how, I had completed everything that I could. So I had the peace that I was looking for. And when she was about to leave, she said, well, I hope I've inspired you. And I said, oh, you have. Right? She totally has, huh? So that's what this came from. That evening, though, I got on the internet and I started searching, and I was like, am I putting the wrong keywords into Google? Like, why can't I find this organization? Surely they're on the ground here. This is all terrible. And then after a while, I started to realize it didn't exist. And I thought, oh my gosh, how can this not exist? What are we doing? I mean, there's going to be disasters forever. It's not going to stop. And if we want to really imagine a world without God, where are the volunteers after disasters? We don't have any. And so right now, basically, there's a monopoly by religious organizations on the recovery portion after disasters. Because response is handled by the government, Red Cross is involved, but whenever it comes to recovery, whenever it comes to rebuilding and everything like this is predominantly done by nonprofits, volunteer organizations, and it's basically just churches. Which is unfortunate, but that is what started Humanist Disaster Recovery Team, so I'll go into that by talking about non-theistic disaster recovery. So, non-theistic disaster recovery does exist. It doesn't just not exist. And so I'm going to go over what it looks like, both from outside of our community as well as within it, starting with outside. So Joe Klein, Time magazine, he got the cover article just after the poor Oklahoma tornado. I'll go ahead and read this along with you. There was an occupying army of relief workers led by local first responders, exhausted but still humping it a week after the storm. Church groups from all over the country. Funny how you don't see organized groups of secular humanists giving out hot meals. I can't stand this man. I can't. Because the way, funny how you, this is clearly a mocking tone. He's clearly poking fun at secular humanists for not having this. And the thing is, he's comparing us to organizations. Churches have been around, religions have been around for thousands of years. These organizations that he's talking about have been developing for decades. And he's comparing us, and we're a new group. We're just now trying to figure out, how to just organize in general. And he's pointing at us and pretending like we just aren't there because we don't want to be there. Or we have some avenue to get there, we're just not utilizing it. Whenever I think about this, I like to think about it as like a teenager who's in a foot race with a 5-year-old who's like, catch up, 5-year-old! I'm so fast. It's just absurd. And so, but this got the cover article of Time magazine. This is how it looks. This is how people perceive it. And so, but that is not exactly true. He was correct in that we don't have a national organization that's prepared to go out for disasters, but it's not true that organized humanists are not on the ground after them. So I'll go ahead and talk about what it looks like from within our community. First of all, there's disorganized individual volunteering. This is called spontaneous volunteers. These are people who flock to the scene because they're like, I need help, I have to do something, and they race to the scene. This is actually a bad thing, and I'll go over it later in the program why this is a bad thing. But a lot of atheists don't really have an avenue, and so this is the way that they go. The next is silent non-theists working through theistic organizations. Now, people tell me this all the time. They just won't say they're an atheist. They know that they need to be part of the group. They know that that's important, but they don't have anything to be a part of, so they just don't say that they're atheist. Go with a church group and do what they, help, like they, should be doing. And then finally, there are local organizations. This is very important. After the tornado, Free OK was there, A-OK was there. These are local organizations who it happens in their backyard, and so they get together who they have and just bring them out there. They're not prepared, they don't know what they're going to see, they don't understand what it looks like, they just get together and they understand that they need to help, so they go and help. And this is very important because local organizations are the ones who are involved in the first response, and local organizations are the ones who carry it over into the long-term recovery. But what we're missing is volunteers who are organized and prepared, coming in from the outside to assist with those local organizations on the ground during the part of time where the outside volunteers are most needed, which is during the recovery period. And so, because of all of this, and after discovering this, I just decided I wasn't going to let it go. I couldn't let it go. It was like, it bothered me so much to think that this didn't happen, and I was like, you know what? I'm a mom. I have plenty of time. This kid goes to sleep at night. I'll just volunteer all my time, and I just need to find somebody who will do this with me because I couldn't do it alone. The thing is, I mean, I looked at it, I was like, well, that's a monumental task. How am I ever going to do that? And so I started talking to absolutely anybody who would listen to me. And I said, you know, I really want to do this, but I don't know how to get started. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And people just started pointing me in directions. Talk to this person, maybe they'll know. Talk to another person, this person, that person. And finally, somebody pointed me to Dale McGowan, who was the executive director of Foundation Beyond Belief. So that night, I went on the website, you know, like I was researching all these places and things that people were telling me. I went on Foundation Beyond Belief's website and I saw the programs that they were involved in, and I got so excited. So first of all, they had Beyond Belief Network. So Beyond Belief Network is volunteer teams throughout the country who are working in their local organizations. What they will do is, after they work in their local community, they will submit their hours, and then as all of these different teams from around the country, all of these secular teams submit their hours, you get to see an entire picture of what atheists are doing around the country. So if your team was to volunteer 50 hours in a week, that's 50 out of 1,000 hours that were donated. And so it just gives a much clearer picture of how we are affecting the entire country, rather than just saying, it's just 50 hours, it's 50 hours of this giant picture, it's a drop in the bucket of a waterfall. And so far they've donated over 60,000 hours in their local communities, and so I was excited about that. Next was crisis response. So this was to collect donations for secular organizations working on the ground after disasters. This is things like a food bank, you know, where people, you know, they don't discriminate on who can volunteer, they don't discriminate on who receives their aid. And so I looked at this and I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. They have a focus on disasters and a focus on volunteers. Disaster volunteers! Right? So I started just like fanning myself. I'm like, this is it. I found them. Right, and so I spent the next couple of weeks trying to prepare to meet Dale McGowan, who was actually coming to speak at Free OK, and I was like, I'm gonna cost this man. I'm gonna, at least make him listen to me. So I did that at Free OK. I took him aside and was like, you guys have this focus, I had spent weeks developing and it's, how it would look, and made this proposal, like an elevator speech that I could give to him quickly so that he could understand he needed to take his entire organization in this direction. Right? That's the hard sell. It's instant. But he said, oh, you know what, this is very interesting, because Noel George, who by the way just replaced him as executive director of Foundation Beyond Belief this past June, had come to him previously and said, I really think this is a direction that we should go. What? I didn't even have to sell it to him. He's like, I can put you in touch with her. And I was like, put me in touch. Yeah. And then after that, I just started working and volunteering crazy numbers of hours. Like, there are times at night where I'm like, I can watch a movie or I can work. I'm gonna work. I love what I do. And so we have developed Humanist disaster recovery teams. And I'm gonna go ahead and talk about what the shape of the program is. So what our mission is to provide recovery communities with disaster volunteers trained in a humanistic approach. The way we're going to do this is by using evidence-based training integrated with humanistic values. So these are two separate things. There's the evidence-based training, which is FEMA laws and rules and regulations and textbooks and all of this information of emergency management that's been gathered over decades of time. And then there are the humanistic values. And this is the different thing that we are bringing into disaster recovery. And so I'm going to go over each separately, starting with the evidence-based training. So response and recovery. Response and recovery. Whenever I had my house destroyed, these are the same thing. Like response, relief, like it all seems the same to me. I don't see any difference. But there's a very, very specific difference whenever it comes to emergency management. So I'm going to go over each of them separately and the evidence-based approach to each. So first, is response. So response is generally the period of time where you have evacuation. You're trying to get everybody away to a place of substantial safety. Like if there was an earthquake, you're trying to get them away from buildings. There could be aftershocks, things like this. Next is securing resources. The moment that a disaster happens, instantaneously, this entire area is completely cut off from the rest of the world. You don't have, we don't farm, we go to the grocery store. Instantaneously though, all of the people in that area no longer have this constant trade and commerce and things coming in. So the first thing that has to be done, you have to secure resources for these people. Next is search and rescue. I think we all know what that is, but the response phase is not complete until that is. Next is medical intervention. So, you can't, if you have a broken arm, you can't wait a week for volunteers to start showing up. This has to be taken care of immediately. And then finally, debris removal to clear paths for aid. Clear paths for aid, those are the volunteers that are coming in from the outside. All of these things, the thing about response that you can see is these are all immediate needs. These are things that have to be taken care of instantaneously. After the disaster ends, you instantaneously move into response. And so these are the kinds of things that the local community is supposed to be involved in. And it's not actually for volunteers from the outside. So I'm going to go ahead and go over a case of what it looks like whenever you have a disaster and people start to flock in from the outside right after it happens. So after 9/11, 40,000 unsolicited spontaneous volunteers showed up at ground zero. So this instantaneously overwhelmed volunteer management. Right now, during the response phase, they need to be thinking about food, water, shelter, injuries, things like this, but people are coming in from the outside saying, what can I do? How can I help? That takes that manager's brain away from the thing they should be focused on, which is survival. That's not a good thing, especially when you have 40,000 people who are showing up and they're in the way. So next is survivors are in need of trained volunteers, people who understand how to not injure themselves, how they're supposed to get, I've taken some courses now in response, and I know how to get a 1,000-pound beam off of a human. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? But right, these are the kinds of things that you'll run into, and you need to have the people who are able to do that kind of thing, able to get to the people who need it. It's very important, and unfortunately, when you have 40,000 unsolicited volunteers, all they can do is stand and say, ah! There's not very much that they can do there. Next is resource depletion. So you already have the area, it's already cut off from resources. Add 40,000 people into that area that now need food, water, and shelter. That's a problem. That's all the more resources that you now need to obtain instantly because this environment is crippled and you're straining an already labored system. So then there's valuable timer is devoted to creating tasks. We went over that a moment ago. We're trying to think about survival whenever it comes to the response phase and not the little things that need to occur over the next several months. And then finally, medical care for those injuring themselves. Something that happens often with these unsolicited volunteers is they have no idea. Like you go into, have you ever been in a destroyed building? Most people haven't. So you don't know what that environment's like. You're not prepared for the ways in which you can injure yourself. You can't look at a building and say, oh, that's a building I can't go inside of because I can tell because I have the training to understand which buildings I can and cannot go inside. And so for all of these reasons, it is very, very important to not flock to an area that isn't prepared for you. They will let you know. If you don't know if you should be there or not, the answer is you shouldn't. That's just the answer. And once you have the systems in place and they say, we are prepared to take volunteers, then you can go. And that's how you can understand when you're supposed to be part of that system. So I put this in, the do's and don'ts of response, just so that you know instantly, like if there were a tornado that happened in the area, what you should be doing. So first is do not spontaneously volunteer. I've already said it several times, but it's so important. So I'm going to say it again. So the local communities need to build the infrastructure to take in those volunteers and to ensure that the system is prepared to receive you. You must be a part of that system. Next is do not send in-kind donations. So a lot of times people will say, oh, you know what, they need shovels. I have 10 shovels. I'm going to send my shovels. Well, at that moment, they're thinking about survival. They do not need shovels at that moment. They might need shovels in the future, but right at the beginning, this just creates a lot of tasks, it creates a lot of clutter, it creates so many things and detracts so much from what they're supposed to be thinking of. So often they don't even meet the needs of the environment. To find those 10 shovels in the giant pile of all the other things that people sent, if you need a shovel, you can't go through the thousands of objects to go find those shovels. Instead, it often doesn't even get used. And so also it takes hours to find what is needed, and it detracts from more important work. And then do send monetary donations. This is so important. And the reason is it allows organizations the fastest access to what they need. If they need shovels, then they can instantaneously, they know where to get shovels, buy shovels, now they have shovels, and they will have the number of shovels that they need, and they'll be able to get them quickly and efficiently if that's what they do. And then it also reduces man hours, so you don't stand in the way, you can actually save more lives. So how can you prepare for a local response? I have this never happens, but if Kansas City had a tornado, a major one, and you guys needed to help in your own backyard, which is very important. Local communities are the ones who are involved in the first response. If your neighbor is trapped in their home and you can hear them, you help. That's what you do. I mean, that's what we did even. I mean, we were assisting people as well. And so the way you can train for this is through CERT. This is free by the government, and they often give these in community centers all around the country, and they're very specific to your area. So here, you'd be learning about tornadoes. If you live in the Pacific Northwest, you'll learn about volcanoes and earthquakes, and depending, train you to be involved in a first response situation in your area. I suggest you guys all do this together as like a group or something, like get together and get involved in the CERT training, because it will teach you exactly what you need to know to be able to efficiently help. You might you'll learn how to, it was through my own CERT training that I learned how to do the beam, and I learned how to use a fire extinguisher and all these different things that are very important. And then finally, Red Cross training and certifications, first aid and CPR. Honestly, you never know when you'll need this. You could need it just at a restaurant or something like that. And so it's very important that you are trained in a way that you can assist lives. Okay, so that's response, and that's why we're Humanist Disaster Recovery Teams. We are not response, we are not the local people, we are the people coming in from the outside. We are the people prepared to go into a situation after it's already taken care of these needs, and they start to say, okay, we're finally ready to receive volunteers. That's us. We're the volunteers who are coming in from the outside to assist in the recovery efforts, which are monumental. Every single destroyed home takes dozens of people to be able to do everything for a single destroyed home. And so when you have thousands of those homes, you need thousands and thousands of countless volunteers coming in. And the thing is about recovery is that's when they will have the food and they will have the water, because they're only taking in the number of volunteers that they can sustain. And as they get more food and they get more water, then they up that number, sustainably. So, recovery, hooray, what we're involved in. So the way to think about recovery is restore, rebuild, reshape. Those are the things that occur during the recovery period. I'm going to go over each. First is restore. This is the cleanup, provision of temporary housing, restoration of public services. It really depends on the type of disaster, whether or not Humanist Disaster Recovery Teams will be involved in this, because, for instance, after a tornado, it's only about 3 days before they start the cleanup. Like I said, I was only a week in, and the bulldozers were ready for it to be completely over. So the odds of us being involved in this depend on what it is, because if it's a flood, you have 3 weeks before recovery starts. The water has to recede, a lot of time goes by, and so we might be involved in the cleanup in that circumstance. It'll always depend on what type of disaster, what their needs are, and how fast we can get things together. The next is rebuild, which is something we will definitely often be involved in, which is the major repair work takes place, people return homes, work and school resume. Oftentimes, nonprofits will be able to tell who needs the help the most as well. There are people who will not have insurance, they'll have no way to recuperate what they've lost, and so nonprofits will assist these people in getting back into homes, getting back into shelter, and so a lot of times we'll be involved in building for the people who are the least fortunate, who have lost the most and can recover the least. And then there's reshape. We're not going to be involved in this, but I put it in because that's part of recovery and it's so important. Improve infrastructure and better disaster planning. What your role is whenever it comes to the reshape period, if you have this happen in your local community, is you need to be vocal, because the government in your area, depending on who they are and where you are, but Oklahoma, it sucks. They will try to not do this. They try to not put shelters in schools. Like they're trying not to pass that after 7 children died at school during the Moore, Oklahoma tornado, because they don't want to put forth the money and everything like that. And so you have to be vocal as local people. You have to be vocal. You have to make sure to stay on it. Make sure that you have your voice heard, because if you don't, they'll just sweep it under the carpet, and then in the future you're not going to have a better chance to meet the needs after your disaster. So I'm going to quickly go over the obstacles that are involved in building these organizations. The first is the need for more volunteers. After disaster, I get emails all the time from people, and I have to say, well, we're not launched yet, so we're not going to be doing that. But eventually, we will be launched. But some disasters can be helped by taken care of by a local community, county, state. It gets larger and larger depending on the size and scope of the disaster. So that'll be the first thing that we have to consider on whether or not we're involved. Next is skills-based volunteering. Every single disaster will end up having, if you have carpentry work that needs to happen, it's important to be able to get a carpenter into that spot. And so we've developed a database, and whenever you sign up for our program, you list what your skills are so that we can easily find you for these specific roles. Next is time-sensitive coordination. This is making sure all of these things happen at the exact correct moment, because you can't have, if you have supplies that you need, you can't have your shovels arriving a week after your volunteers are getting there. Everything has to happen at the correct moment. And so that's the next thing. And then training. So a lot of people take training and they kind of just kick it to the curb and say, oh, that's way too much work, so we're not going to do it. But we are an evidence-based program, and we are providing training for the following reasons. Oh, look, we're supposed to. So it's beneficial for disaster volunteers, decreases mental health impacts, increases confidence in fellow volunteers, and specifically disaster and program-specific training is best, and so this is the route that we're going to go. And then finally, partnership. So as I said before, all of these organizations, most of them are involved specifically as religious institutions. The thing is, to be able to go into this as a small organization, you have to be able to partner with one of these large nonprofits who are providing all these things. Just a moment ago, whenever I said it needs a carpenter, the carpenter isn't just needed by the disaster. That's somebody who's created jobs within the disaster area who's looking for volunteers. And it's through going through them is the only way that we're allowed to get there. And so, what do you do? Well, as it turns out, there are a couple of national nonprofits that work specifically with companies. For instance, Google can send their employees through some of these secular, technically secular nonprofits, and we have approached them and told them who we were, told them what we were doing, and they are very excited to work with us. And I'm so happy, hooray, I was so worried. But no, we're going to be going with these organizations that currently work with companies. So, huzzah. And then finally, we have a unique challenge. We're going to be the first national non-theistic program in a landscape of faith-based organizations, volunteers, and survivors. So that'll be interesting, right? And so what do we do? What do we do when people are like, well, why do you need to be here? Why do you need to even say, why do you need to say that you're a humanist? Why do you need to do that? Because people will attempt. And that's where humanist service values come into play. So to go over those, the way we like to talk about it is survivor first. The mentality of survivor first. This isn't meaning don't eat food so that you can, give your food away or anything like that. It's how to think about the scenario, how to think about the environment in which you're in. So first of all, the experience belongs to the survivor. So here's the deal. Whenever you look at a destroyed home, it just looks like a pile of crap. It definitely looks like a pile of crap. And I know that my pile of crap looked like a pile of crap to everybody else, but it did not look like a pile of crap to me at all. It was my whole life. every story, like every single object. I remembered when I brought it into my home. I remembered every time I interacted with it. And some of those objects, I had lots of value put in just to weird things, just weird. I didn't even realize some things would just pain me in this weird way. And then to have these people just treating it like a pile of crap was very, very hard. And so to understand that this experience is really their experience, and to understand and treat every single object, no matter its condition or what it is, you don't understand what that object meant to them. There's no way for you to look at somebody's home and say, oh, that's an important object. Because we put value on things that cost nothing. You have no idea what is the most precious object to anyone. And so it's very important to understand that and to treat the experience with respect. So how do you understand, though, how to treat the experience? So what you have to do is you have to listen. Because survivors will tell you exactly what they need. They will be very vocal about it. I gotta tell you, it's really strange. I'll give 3 examples really quickly. Me, my husband, and my neighbor. I was attached to objects. I had little things. I was like, there's this ring, and I want to be buried with it. We must find it if at all possible. And I had my father-in-law digging through insulation for an hour, and he found my ring. And I'm so happy that I got this thing. I just wanted it so desperately, and they found it for me. Then there's my husband, who does not care about objects at all. He got the cards out of his computer, and then he's just like, now I'm good. I don't need any objects, but don't do anything. The papers, put the papers in a pile. Oh, I need all the papers. He's like, he likes to sort papers and filing cabinets and everything like that. So anytime that he saw papers had been moved and they hadn't been treated with the way in which he said, I want you to do this stuff with the papers. And they weren't listening. And so he started losing his mind over this. And so it's very important if somebody says, the papers are the most important. That's how you understand how they're viewing their world. The only way that you can understand the experience of the survivor is to listen to how they view their own world. And so I needed my objects, he needed his papers in a pile. Our neighbor, on the other hand, just said, bulldoze it to the ground, I'm not going, I don't want to see my life look like that, I don't even know. I have no interest in knowing. And that's what you do for him. Every single survivor will tell you exactly the way in which they need you to be involved in their lives. And so you might go in and think, I'm here to shovel your house. That might not be what you need to do, though. What you need to do is listen to what they need you to be doing. Sort of like whenever I said I need to take pictures of this, I knew that if I took pictures of that, I would walk away and feel healed in some way internally. I'm the only one who understands how I can feel healed internally. And so listening to the survivor and taking them seriously is the most important thing that you can do. And then finally, be the extra hands. You're not there, you're not a person who's in there who's trying to tell them, if they believe in God, well, where was your God now? People do that all the time after disasters. It's so mean. These poor people just lost their lives. And so what you're supposed to think of yourself as is the extra hands. They have a monumental amount of tasks that they need to take care of, and they're not able to do it on their own. And that's what you're there to help to do. And so that's not scary. Woohoo, right? If we explain what our human service values are, and this is all that we're bringing, we're just saying, hey, we acknowledge that the experience of the survivor is one of the most important things that's going on here, and to be able to listen to their needs and meet them in the way that they're asking us to meet them. That's it. So our team trainings that we have are going to be Introduction to HDR Teams, that's the program-specific training. Then the member training is going to be the logistics and how to arrive on time with what you need prepared to go. And then finally is Introduction to Disaster. That's going to be going over where you are in the disaster environment, how to understand specifically per disaster how you should be interacting to prepare you for what it's going to look like, prepare you for what your role is going to be. So this year we're going to be having our first deployment. That should be in October, so be looking for that. So that'll be interesting. And then let's see. Continuing to grow. There are 3 different ways in which we're going to be growing the program over the years. The first are logistics. Eventually we would like to become one of these organizations that's providing the jobs. where we'll be the partner, and the people who are going to be partnering us with groups like SSA or Oasis or all these different secular organizations who are looking to send their own teams would be going through us as the partner who's providing the jobs. Then there's field reports as people go out and have their experience. We're going to be taking that back in and shaping our trainings. And then finally surveys to see how our trainings are working and what should be added or taken out and how it's actually affecting people through their experience on the ground. So to get involved, you register for HDR Teams at foundationbeyondbelief.org/HDR Teams. I basically suggest that everyone do this because you can set up how you want to be involved. And if we contact you and you're not available, I'm not available. And then you don't have to do anything. There's no commitment involved in signing up. But if we were to contact you and you were available and you did meet the needs, then we would have your information and we'd be able to contact you and have you be a part of the program. So, and then if you have any ideas, questions, or comments, you can submit them to me at HDRTeams at foundationbeyondbelief.org. My name is Rebecca Vitsmun, HDR Teams Development Coordinator. Thank you.